All right, Steve. It's Monday, March 16th, 2026. S&P is sitting at 6740. But let's forget the ticker for a minute. Today, we're opening a different kind of book. A ledger, you might say. One that was written back in the 50s, but whose ink is still fresh on the contracts you're trading right now.
This one sentence right here, this tells you everything. You see, before 1950, war had an off switch. It was simple. We fought, we won, we came home. The factories went back to making cars and refrigerators. But then, the Cold War came crashing down, and the shooting started in Korea. And that switch, it didn't just get flipped on, it got jammed, permanently.
So let's talk about that moment, the moment the switch broke. For generations, the plan was always the same. You fight, you win, and you immediately stand down the war machine. Why? Well, it was about fiscal discipline. It was just the American way of doing things.
And this right here, this is the brick. The exact moment. Before 1950, you see the pattern. It's clean. After 1950, everything changes. See, Korea wasn't just some regional squabble. It was the first hot battle in a new global Cold War. Demobilizing now, that wasn't being responsible, it was suicide. We weren't just fighting a war anymore. We were entering a whole new state of being, permanent defense.
So what's the price tag on permanent defense? We're not talking about a simple line item increase here. No. This was a total rewiring of the American economic nervous system. The numbers that came out of this era, they established a new baseline. A spending floor that, believe me, we have never, ever gone below since.
Just look at the speed of this change. Look at that jump. In just 3 years, defense spending didn't just grow, it quadrupled. $13 billion to over $50 billion. Now that's not a budget adjustment. That is a shockwave sent through the entire economy.
And get this wasn't just some government program, this was 15%. 15% of the entire U.S. economy, all of it, redirected to the military. Now, by all rights, that kind of shock should have crippled us, but it did the exact opposite. It kickstarted a manufacturing boom that made the post-World War II recovery look like a warm-up act. And all this, it gave birth to a new kind of beast in the American economy. What we now call the military-industrial complex, a permanent, tangled-up relationship between the Pentagon and the country's biggest corporations. And for the stock market, well, this was a game-changer. War spending was no longer a temporary surge. It was now a permanent, predictable, government-backed part of doing business, a new staple of corporate earnings.
So you have to ask yourself, you don't just quadruple the defense budget without a whole new way to pay for it. So how was this forever war funded? The old playbook, war bonds, celebrity rallies, that was tossed right in the trash. This required a completely new kind of money.
So Washington created a new model. Part 1 was just brute force. They kept the incredibly high wartime tax rates. But Part 2 was something brand new, something that would fundamentally change American capitalism for the next century and beyond. Permanent deficit spending.
Here's the nitty-gritty. Corporate tax rates stayed pinned near 50%. The top individual bracket, over 90%. But the real shift, the one that matters, was philosophical. We stopped trying to eliminate the national debt. The new strategy was to manage it, essentially betting that the economy would always grow faster than the bill came due.
And that's exactly what it was, a massive leverage play. A bet that American industry, supercharged by these government contracts, would grow so fast that the debt would eventually look small in comparison. We were literally borrowing from our own future to pay for the present.
Now, a leverage play that big has enormous consequences for the market. It didn't just fund the military, it completely altered the DNA of the S&P 500. It created a whole new class of industrial titans, companies whose entire business model was built on this new, seemingly endless river of government money. The mechanism was actually pretty simple when you break it down. Step 1, the government signs the checks guaranteeing revenue streams for decades to come. Step 2, entire industries, we're talking aerospace, electronics, they explode basically overnight to cash those checks. The tech corridors in Seattle, out in LA, they were built on this exact foundation. And step 3, Wall Street recalibrates. Defense spending wasn't a windfall anymore. It was a blue chip staple.
So why are we sitting here talking about the 1950s? Because the market you're trading in today was built on that Korean War foundation. The rules of the game, the relationship between the Pentagon and Wall Street, the whole blueprint was drawn up back then, and we're all still living in the house it built.
This timeline really says it all. The ledger was opened in 1953. The original justification for it all, the Soviet Union, well, that just disappeared in 1991. But the spending, the system, the ledger itself, it stayed open. And here we are, all these decades later, and that ledger is still one of the most important documents on Wall Street.
And this is the direct inheritance of that decision. When you buy a share of a major defense contractor today, you aren't just betting on a company's performance. No, you're betting on the continuation of a 70-year-old policy. You're betting on the permanent ledger. It's the reason they're considered portfolio staples. Their number one customer has essentially guaranteed their revenue stream for generations.
So here's the takeaway. A cornerstone of this market, of our economy, was built on a Cold War foundation. Now the enemy is gone, but the economic engine that was built to fight it is still redlining. So the question for us as traders isn't if this permanent ledger exists. The question is, for how much longer can we keep turning the pages? Watch the defense stocks. I'll see you at the open.